Hello, District 62 Club coaches. This training is meant to give you an idea of what you're expected to do as a club coach. We will go over roles and responsibilities, some strategies, some tips for success, some next steps, and some helpful links. As a coach, you are expected to facilitate the growth of a healthy club back to a healthy status. How are you going to do this? You're going to do this by guiding the leadership team, monitoring the club processes and structure to ensure that the club is operating in a consistent fashion, and you're going to try to identify the gaps in the club to figure out how they got in that shape, and then you're going to try to help them get or identify some solutions to their problem, and then you're going to help them implement those solutions, then monitor what they've implemented for quality. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to analyze that club's current situation. You're going to have a number of club visits in order to do this. Your first visit will be an unofficial visit in which you're there to observe the club, see how it operates. And in this first unofficial club visit, what you're also doing is trying to determine if you're truly a good fit as a coach for that club. If you deem that you are a good fit for that club, then you're going to want to connect with the club's president or VPE or some other leader if the president is not there. But ultimately, you're going to want to connect with the president, and make sure that they also believe that you're a good fit as a coach for their club. You're going to also want to document notes for further discussion. And for further discussion means that if there's also a co-coach assigned, documenting notes for further discussion with the club, with the co-coach, is a great idea to determine if they also came to those same conclusions about the club during their observation. But you'll also want to document those notes for further discussion with the leadership team. If it's deemed that you are a good coaching match and you and the leadership decide on that, the next step is to escalate or to make contact with the district club growth director, and the club growth director will then contact Toastmasters International and do the necessary paperwork, submit that so that you can become an official coach for that club. After that's been done, then you will want to make contact with the club that you've been assigned to coach, probably the president or another point of contact person from the leadership team. If that person was identified during your first unofficial club visit, you want to make contact with them to identify that, when you plan to make your first unofficial visit and how much time you need for your presentation, what audience you plan to communicate to during your presentation. Because, for example, during your unofficial visit, you may have determined that you really need to connect with the leadership team first. If this is the case, then you may determine you don't want to meet with the leadership team at a regular meeting, but you want to meet with that leadership team outside of the club's standard meeting time so that you're not infringing upon anything they already have scheduled. But if you deem that you want to present to the the whole membership, then you would want to identify that you want 30 minutes to connect or to introduce yourself to the whole club and to identify what it is that you plan to do as a coach. What you'll be doing as a coach is basically foundated, or it is foundated on the Toastmasters How to Rebuild a Toastmasters Club program. And what you're going to be doing in this first formal visit is talking about the tenets of that How to Rebuild a Toastmasters Club program. And you'll also be identifying what's expected of the club. So you need to identify that you need buy-in from the club in order for this process to be a success. The club has to own the process because you're there to guide the process, or to guide it and to facilitate it, but the club is the owners and they have to ultimately be the ones to implement any solutions identified and to sustain anything. In that first formal visit, you're going to continue that needs assessment process. And what you're also going to do is you're going to identify that you plan to do a more thorough assessment of the club. I recommend that you use the club quality checklist in order to do this more thorough assessment. I recommend that you pass the club quality checklist at the end of your session. So maybe use the last 5 to 10 minutes to pass that out and to really explain that. If you get the whole 30 minutes, you're going to want to really talk about what the How to Rebuild a Program is and really what is expected of the club. So if we briefly go into the How to Rebuild a Toastmasters Club, you would want to highlight some of the core tenets of it, like the responsibility is the club's, but you'll highlight things like what a coach must do: build a rapport with the club's leaders and members, assess the environment, observe, analyze, recommend solutions, develop a plan with goals for improvement. So if one of your responsibilities is to develop a plan with goals for improvement, you really need the members to work with you in identifying what these goals are and work with you for developing plans for improvement. And the DCP should really guide any goals and plans for improvement. Implement the plan and ensure that the changes are performed by the officers and members as much as possible. This is the reason why referring to the How to Rebuild a successful club program is important, because it clearly identifies and put the onus on the club, and particularly the leaders and the members in general, and then instill enthusiasm, loyalty, and a sense of responsibility for the club's future. And you can read the requirements, the specific requirements. So the club quality checklist will be the assessment tool really used to kind of gather really the information needed to identify what the members deem as really the main issue within the club. And The club quality checklist really looks a lot like moments of truth. Moments of truth. The members will be assessing if they think their club is quality from the standpoint of club meetings, from the standpoint of membership, and from the standpoint of educational activities and overall the general structure and flow of the club. So gathering this information from these areas, from the general membership and from the leadership, will help you as a coach identify what the members believe are the main strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats within the club. What I recommend that you do is in the handout that you pass out, I recommend that you mark the leadership handouts with something to designate that these handouts were disseminated to one of the leadership or one of the officers, so that when you collect these assessments at the beginning of the second coaching session that you have, you'll be able to distinguish how the officers filled out this checklist from the general members, and then you'll get a clear idea if members and officers see the issue with the club differently or similar. So you'll pass this club quality checklist out at the end of the first meeting. You'll collect it at the beginning of the second meeting. You'll also request that formal second meeting at the end of the first meeting. Ideally, you want another 30 minutes. If you can't get the whole 30 minutes, you need 20 minutes at least. Using the results of this checklist, you're going to want to identify what the main strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats were. So you're going to want to analyze those checklists and identify what were a few common strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats identified within these checklists. And then based on that, you'll use that to have the club members identify some possible strategies that can be employed to further strengthen those areas that they're already strong in and add to areas where they are already feel like they have opportunities and to get more opportunities. And then what are some strategies that can close the gap where they have these weaknesses or can close these possible or get rid of these possible threats? Have the members identify that and discuss it and identify how they can implement these solutions. If a fourth meeting is deemed as necessary, then that's where you'll cover the DCP and how you'll create an action plan. And the DCP will guide that and the goals that the club needs to address. And this will be a prioritized plan, action plan, where the DCP is guiding that. So what are some strategies that you can employ to close the gaps? If it is deemed that your leadership team needs training, then obviously they need to go to a TLI or a makeup TLI. But if they've missed that, then I have a link in the helpful links area to Leadership Central where they can look at tutorials for their particular roles. For particular assessment and analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which hopefully you'll do moments of truth. You need to identify whether or not the club has already done a moment of truth. If so, how long ago was it done? The club could always do moments of truth again. I recommend that they do it and that they do it in a segmented manner as maybe a series. The first section of moments of truth could be chunked in 10 minutes, and then another segment can be chunked in another week in 10 minutes. We had the club quality checklist, and coaches are expected to do this other troubleshooting guide checklist. And I'm going to bring that up real quick. So coaches, I expect all coaches to fill this out, so you can answer questions on the club after assessing them a few times, and you can answer that question based on how that club is. So you either can answer it from a proactive or a reactive standpoint, and they have a corrective action recommended for you. If membership is an issue, identify whether or not the club has had open houses or other types of membership drives. If not, this is something that they should be doing. If you believe Meetup could possibly be a strategy that could help your club, then connect with me and I'll connect with the Meetup chair and we can get your club connected through Meetup. As a coach, you need to establish the times that you plan to coach or the times you plan to connect with the leadership time and when you plan to follow up with your point of contact to ensure that they are following up on any action steps. You need to be consistent in checking in with the club and monitoring them. So you need to have a consistent pattern. So the tips for success: listen to the needs of the club. This club quality checklist is the first step to gathering the needs of the club and trying to listen to them. And then after you get that and you do the SWOT, then following up further and trying to listen to them, but get buy-in from the club on the process and then guide the process, but let the club own it. If you haven't already visited the club for your first unofficial visit, do it, but make sure that it's a good fit. Connect with your co-coach. You guys are team members. It's important you can work together. This is the whole reason why it's two of you. Make sure that you're on the same page. See if you are observing the same thing. and look at how to rebuild a Toastmasters club. That's your resource. And then don't forget that I'm expecting this club coach troubleshooting guide to be turned in by, sometime in October. Then here are the helpful links. I've referenced Moments of Truth. We've looked at that. We've looked at the club quality checklist. We've looked at the club coach troubleshooting guide. This is a link to club coach frequently asked questions. I've referenced the Toastmaster Club officer roles. And then this bottom link is, excuse me, a link to Carol Prahinsky's presentation on how to build a successful club.
299As.
I'm not sure why it started all the way down there, but. And Carol probably will go into detail. I tried to keep this condensed in more of a step manner of like what you'll need to do right away. And that about sums it up. If you have any questions, please let me know.